Hello everybody, it is MxRheyRhey back with another video. So today on Art Talk I will be showing and hopefully keeping on track to talk about the process of how I made this jelly gouache pumpkin head illustration for y'all for the month of October, particularly around spooky Halloween season holiday. But before I really get into that, I wanted to just let you guys know this is officially the last video before I move. I'll have one more video with this particular art desk, and then after that my schedule is going to be kind of crazy and unknown. So just to let you know, if you like these videos, if you want to like it in the description down below, or comment or subscribe to this channel, that is appreciated. But if you also would like, I have a coffee account. The link should be down in the description. If you appreciate these videos or the story video, the Altruni story video that's going to be coming up this next time, and you want to donate to my coffee account, you can donate whatever you want. It could be a one-time thing, it could be a monthly subscription. Anything is appreciated. It just lets me know that you guys are still interested in this channel, and I can probably put this as a bigger priority while I'm over in Texas. So just letting you guys know that that is an option. So let me get past process has already started. This is technically always my first layer. I always do a really big color block of what I want certain things to be, sorry, it's early in the morning. My coffee is just kicking in. Particularly, my first layer is usually the color block of the background, and it's really like I particularly with gouache always start thin and then work my way up to an opacity. I also decided to use black watercolor paper this time around because for one, I figured I hadn't used it in a while, and two, it just really helps a lot when you're trying to do a nighttime scene where you don't have to worry about how dark your painting is. You just have to make sure it's not too dark. So that is why I particularly decided to use black watercolor paper for this one. It just seemed like the most logical choice to me. So I do generally start blocking out the background a little bit first. As you can see, there is going to be a character that is going to be the main focus of this piece. I didn't block out color around him just because it wouldn't make sense to me. For me personally, there was a lot of anatomy within this that I wanted to get right, so I didn't want to paint over my pencil sketchings that you saw, just so I could kind of remember where all of my anatomy was. Also, I'm going to apologize now. Also, if you hear a baby in the background, that's my niece. I'm babysitting today. That's why I'm doing a closet recording. I'm going to apologize now that I'm back on track, for the inconsistent clarity of the video. My camera was a little too close to my shoulder and I kept bumping it, and that made it go out of focus every once in a while. And I usually don't notice that until a little later, just because I'm more focused on the painting than on the recording. So yes, now I am on the first layer of my subject of the painting. Like I said, I started with blocking out the color. Now I'm adding a little bit of details. If I decide to add more later, that will be here or there. I was just really more focusing on his stance right now, and if his hands would look, like a hand. Hands in particular are always very, very common an artist's weakness. And one thing I do particularly love about gouache and my gouache paintings is that I feel like I can get a lot of detail or subtle details just within the brush stroke. I don't know if it's particularly this jelly gouache or just gouache in general. I haven't done a lot of gouache paintings just yet for me to figure this out. But I have noticed, particularly with how I paint, that I put a lot of texture within my brush strokes that help with the paintings that I make. Like, I use the brush to keep the texture in there, to add the detail. Just so, I don't know. I don't know if it's a me thing. I don't know if that's just how gouache is, but it's really nice. And I know it's very fun to try to manipulate and work around that sort of feature of mine. Particularly when it comes to blending in colors or having to block out specific shapes within things. If I'm getting better at figuring out what kind of like brushes to use and gouache consistency when it comes to the opacity and the textures that I want. It just so happens that pumpkins have a very rough texture in person, so I didn't have to really worry about being so neat and clean and everything with all of my brush strokes, particularly at night when shadows play a really big role in a lot of things. So I was very, very happy with how this piece came out, particularly how, particularly, like I said this morning, how I got in a lot of detail just by, in my head, it's explaining it as adding detail without adding work. I let a lot of the brush strokes do a lot of the detail work for me. This is like my favorite part. This crow is just so adorable. I don't know if it's just a blackbird. I know there's a difference with like sizes between blackbirds, crows, and ravens, so I don't believe this is raven because ravens would be huge, but this is a blackbird. Also, if you're wondering why I'm ignoring the baby that is crying right now, is because I'm not the only babysitter. I wouldn't be recording this right now if I was just going to leave the baby alone. She is also teething, so, you know, she's going to be cranky no matter what I do. I can't help her right now. She just probably needs a nap. Okay, so in particular, the subject of the painting, now I'm getting into the details. I haven't finished all of the details. As you see, I'm doing some of the shadowy work on the pumpkin now, just giving it sort of an outline. I figured, even though I don't like putting in a lot of detail within a lot of my paintings, sometimes you just need a 2-tone or a 3-tone within a specific subject piece. It just works out that way. I can't describe it. Now that I've gotten most of the pumpkin done, I'm just gonna let the paint settle. It's dry, otherwise I wouldn't have my palette on it, but now I'm just gonna have to focus on the background because everything else is looking just a little too blah. I know I said I don't like a lot of detail in my paintings, but that doesn't mean I can't add a little bit of color or just, shape to the background. Otherwise, I should have just made the piece a little smaller. So, one thing I particularly like about gouache is how it layers. Depending on how you work with it and your particular style of working with it, in my particular view, I apparently work slow enough that all of my paint likes to dry before I'm even done with the piece, mostly because it's a lot of just playing with the water consistency. With the jelly gouache in particular, it's really easy to just rehydrate what you're working with, so I never really have to worry about a consistency when I add water to dried paint. But it's nice. It works out in a way, since I do like to get a thicker or more opaque as I go within the layers, that my gouache just dries out because I paint too slow for it. And so in this particular instance, when it came to details in the background, I worked almost the exact same way as I did with the pumpkin. I started with general colors. Obviously, it's just like wheat, so mostly yellow, and then playing with the tone and the tint of that yellow just to bring out the shadows and the highlights of this just particular background. Like I said, if it's not a lot of details but you can get away with depth, then a lot of people just give it the illusion of detail, particularly for me anyway. Like that's how it was described to me when I showed it to my family, and like two other people in my family like do art. So that's how it was described to me, that there was a lot of detail, and to me it was really just a lot of fun brushwork and playing with paint consistencies and depth. But other than that, it really has been a fun process. Even though this video is only like 14 or so, rounding up 14 minutes long, this thing took me like 3.5 hours to do. So at this point, because you see it in the same order that I just paint everything, at this point I'm kind of tired. But I know, like, I'm determined to get this thing done. So, oh yes, my little pumpkin head does need feet, doesn't he? Okay, so now that I had time to make the background look a little more exciting for the rest of the figure, and the scarecrow has had time to just sit, and it's important to let it sit even after it's dry, just because the gouache can always be, this gouache particularly can always be reactivated no matter what. As long as you don't spray it with a varnish, it can be reactivated with just a little bit of water. So letting it sit and sort of just steep on the paper will help the color stay where it needs to be if you are working with a wetter brush at this point. At this point, I am working with just the driest of damp brushes, and when I'm putting all of these little extra details into the scarecrow. But you know, it's always those finishing touches. I do add another like slightly orangier yellow color to the hay. In this particular time, I just didn't show the process of doing that because I didn't want this video to be absolutely like so long, because it took me 3 days to edit this, as long as the thing, just because I was just so much detail that I was recording. So that being said, and my rambly process finished, this is the final piece. Let me just give it a second to focus in. And I hope you guys liked my ramblings. I hope you guys liked the process and the painting for this final reveal. And I hope you guys have a wonderful October. Just a reminder, this is the last video before I move to a different state and my schedule will become very erratic. So if you would like to show appreciation for this video or my channel in particular, there's a like button, you can comment, you can subscribe, and there is a coffee link in the description below to show your appreciation if you so choose to. It is not a requirement. So anyway, I'm gonna leave now, and I hope you guys have a happy Halloween in October.